All right, so thank you everyone for joining on finally a sunny day here in North Carolina. I'm in Concord, North Carolina. I'd love to hear a little bit if there's anyone outside of this area, if you're dealing with any of the wintry mix that's going on already. So my name is Danielle Kuhn. I am the community manager at the Cabarrus Center that is now open in Concord, North Carolina. The Cabarrus Center, if you haven't heard of it, it is a physical space located on Union Street in downtown Concord, and it is a place for entrepreneurs and existing businesses and just the community to come and learn, grow, and accelerate their business through events, networking, education, and mentor programs that we have here. So we do have private offices, meeting rooms, event space, and then co-working workstations available. And the Cabarrus Center will be operated by the company Flywheel Coworking, who I work for. So there are memberships that are available monthly, depending on what you're looking for. So we're open here in Concord, North Carolina, and excited to welcome everyone into the space. So this event that we have here is called the Indeavor Luncheon, and it's really going to be a way that we can bring the public as well as the members of the Cabarrus Center together and learn about what's going on in the local community, whether it be with the economy, with personal or business interests, or just conversation to be able to understand what's going on as a resident or someone who works within the county. So today we're starting with Paige Castrodale, and Paige is going to walk us through economic development. So Paige is the executive director of the Cabarrus Economic Development Corporation, and she's going to share with us what is economic development and why does it matter to us. So she's going to be able to go through a presentation with us, and then we'll open it up for Q&A afterwards. All right, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Paige, and then I'll let her kick it off. Sorry, one moment, my computer is frozen. All right, so Paige has been with the Cabarrus Economic Development Corporation since 2018. Before being named the executive director in December 2020, Paige oversaw the business retention and expansion program, where she worked closely with the local companies to connect them to the resources needed to continue to be successful in Cabarrus County. She launched Grow Cabarrus, which provides companies with valuable market research aimed at helping them reach the next level of success. She also helped establish the Cabarrus Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which I just mentioned, which has fulfilled a broad spent 7 years living up and down the East Coast while her husband, Andrew, served in the Navy. They now call Concord home, where they live with their 4 children. All right, Paige, if you want to take it over.
Thanks, Danielle. Yes, I also am in the Cabarrus Center. Danielle, will you enable the screen share so I can pull up my presentation? So the EDC moved into this space late last week. And so I'm in my new shiny office with my big, beautiful window that you all can't see in downtown Concord, but I hope that there will be an opportunity for us to show this space off to you all soon. I see a lot of familiar faces on here and some folks that I don't know. So I'm looking forward to some good conversation today. So before I get too far into things, I wanted to introduce you to our team. So Sam and Chanel are both on this call. Samantha Graff is our recruitment project manager, and Chanel is our economic development coordinator. She keeps us all together and touches just about everything that we do in this office. We are a small team, but we are quite mighty, and we'll tell you that we stay pretty busy. And this is a good group to work with, and I feel really lucky to keep working with them. So who are we as Cabarrus Economic Development? Our goal really is to just increase the quality of life for residents in our community. And we do that through the creation of high impact jobs and new tax investment. Simply put, we make it easier for great companies to start here, move here, and continue to grow in Cabarrus County. And so our focus really are those job creators who generate significant tax revenue back to the community. And I want to talk a little bit more about why that's so important. So if you take Corning, for example, they're located just outside Midland in Cabarrus County, and they're one of our community's largest employers. They're one of the largest employers. They're also one of the largest tax generators for our community. So if you look at the tax bill for Corning, which is public, if you didn't know, you can go on the Cabarrus County website and look up tax valuation. So just like you and I pay taxes on our house and on our cars, these companies are paying tax as well. They're paying tax on the building that they're doing business in, and they're also paying tax on all of the machinery and equipment that's inside that building. So Corning's tax valuation is over $336 million. This was based on their I think it was 2020 is the number that the year that I pulled. So they're paying those taxes to Cabarrus County. And that comes out to about $3.3 million a year that Corning is writing a check to Cabarrus County to pay their taxes. I am very thankful that my tax bill is not that large. But when you think about all the services that we as taxpayers help fund in our community, like schools and parks and fire and EMS and all the other services that make our community work and make it such a good place to live, Corning is paying into that at a significant level. And not to mention, it also comes with over 600 jobs. So this is why these types of companies are so important in our community. To break it down a little bit more, Corning's tax value, if you look at what the average house in Cabarrus County is worth and what that home generates in property taxes, you'd have to build a lot of houses to make up the same amount that Corning is paying in taxes. And each one of those houses will likely have some children that need to go to school, which means that the county would have to figure out how to build those schools and how to fund them. And so if you're relying on residential to pay for the services in our community, that math will never add up. And so that's why, again, it's important for companies like Corning and many of the other manufacturers that we have here that we're able to diversify our tax base and support the services that way. So how do we do this? We do it through recruitment, which is probably what you guys think about when you hear economic development, bringing new companies into the community. We do it through retention and expansion, which is supporting the companies that are already located here, making sure that they have what they need to continue to be successful and to grow and expand here. More recently, we're doing that by supporting entrepreneurship. And that's represented in the new Cabarrus Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, where we're located now. You know, we really feel like supporting that stage of business development is just as important as recruiting new companies here and helping existing companies grow. And so we're happy to have a stake in the ground in that respect now. And then we also do that through product development, which really just means making sure that we have the necessary real estate. If companies are interested in our community because the quality of life is strong and the taxes are low and we have the available workforce, but we don't have a building to put them in, we can't bring them here. And so that's why it's important that we're aware of what sites are available and what buildings are available. And if there is a gap in any one area, that we do what we can to help fill that. So I want to talk more specifically about recruiting companies to Cabarrus County. This is how it works. We get an RFI. Samantha is our project manager, so she receives an RFI either from the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, which is the nonprofit. It's a public-private partnership with the state, with the Department of Commerce. They're the economic development arm of the state. So we would get an RFI either from them or from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, which is the regional economic development organization here. Sometimes we'll get one directly from a broker or a site consultant. Sometimes one of our community partners will reach out and say, you know, maybe it's Duke Energy. And they say, we have a client of ours that's looking for some space in Cabarrus County. Can you help? And every once in a while, a company will reach out to us directly. So we get this RFI and we fill it out with whatever the requested information is. Typically, it's real estate. They'll ask for utility information. You know, a lot of these companies have high electric demands. or they're high water users or they're natural gas users. And so we've got to make sure that we have the infrastructure in place to serve their particular needs. They'll ask questions about the community, workforce specifically, you know, can I hire the skilled labor in your community? That's going to be a very important question. They'll ask about the community college or the schools. They'll ask questions about quality of life. You know, we're fortunate being in such close proximity to Charlotte that a lot of companies, you know, maybe they're from outside of the country or from a different part of the country, they're familiar with the Charlotte region, but they don't know about Cabarrus County and they don't know about Concord. And so they are relying on us to help them see why this is a good place to work and live. You know, if they're going to be hiring 600, 1,000, 2,000 people, they want to know that the folks that they're hiring actually want to live here. And so we do what we can to answer those questions. And then they also often ask for an incentive proposal. And we'll talk a little bit more about incentives here in a little bit. But Samantha packages all that together, sends it back out to whoever it was that requested the information. And then we go from there. And honestly, it's everybody's best guess at that point what the process looks like. You know, in a perfect world, the company will down select. They'll come up with a short list of 2 or 3 or 4 communities. They'll do some more research. They'll you know, we'll talk incentives. We'll talk construction timeline. And if we're lucky, then we're the community that they pick. They often have a lot of additional information that they're requesting. They'll come visit the site. Like I said, we'll talk in more detail about incentives. But a lot of times that none of that happens, or it happens, and then we find ourselves in a situation where the company has changed their mind, or they go completely dark and we don't hear anything, or they say, you know what, we really need to just start this process over. We've had some things that have changed internally, and we need to regroup here. And so, you know, throughout this process, we stay in close contact with whoever, you know, whether it's the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, you know, they have a project manager. We'll stay in close contact with them, with the company, of course. And then also, you know, let's say they're looking in Concord at the grounds at Concord, we stay in close contact with the Concord city manager and his staff, with the elected leaders who are ultimately going to have to make the call on incentives. And these are ongoing discussions that happen over time. You know, a lot of times when we have made a project announcement, we've worked that project for several months, if not years, before we get to the point where we're announcing it. And so, you know, I think a lot of times to the public, it might look like we pop up at a public hearing and we ask for incentives, and this is the first anybody has heard of it. But, you know, these are certainly ongoing discussions that we have for quite a while. This is just to give you an idea of what our project activity looks like. This is from January 2020 to January 2021. You'll see there was a lot of up and down uncertainty, as I'm sure you all are seeing in your own respective industries as we were navigating the pandemic. For us, typically we see an average of between 8 and 10 project RFIs each month. January of this year has kept us quite busy. February has kept us quite busy. And so if there's anything that I hope you guys take away from today, it's that activity is strong in Cabarrus County. And despite the pandemic's impact on industry, we are certainly seeing that there are many, many companies and many industries that are doing very well and are continuing to grow and have expansion needs that they need met, and they need additional locations. And so we hope that this is indicative of what 2021 will look like for us. You know, we know that our community has lost a lot of jobs over the last year. And so the more we can do to bring companies in to create new jobs, you know, we know the better off the community will be. In fact, just since January of last year, these are all the project announcements that we've had. We had a very busy spring and summer last year, despite the pandemic really kind of picking up. And we're very fortunate to make these announcements. And these companies here represent over 750 jobs and over $230 million in investment. So again, you think back to the formula that we talked about with a company's tax valuation and how they end up paying tax on that back to the community. You know, these are jobs and dollars that we need right now. And so we're, like I said, we're very fortunate to be in this position. So I wanted to, well, actually, let me stop here and see, does anybody have any questions about anything I just went through, anything that you wanted me to expand on a little bit? And again, we'll have time for questions at the end, but I think this is probably a good time to take a minute.
I'm good right now, Paige. I have some questions, but I'll wait till the end because I think you're going to get into it in a second.
Okay.
What I have a question
Thanks,
about.
John.
Okay.
All right, so let's pretend like you are a site consultant and you're representing Project Reboot. I'll admit I gave this project a name based on the first thing I saw when I looked up from my computer yesterday afternoon when I was updating this presentation. It was my kids' Reboot. These projects come to us under code name and they are ridiculous. A lot of times the names that we get are just, you know, we have this conversation, please don't make me go out in public and say the name of this project. This is just so silly. But let's say you're a site consultant, you're representing Project Reboot. It's an international company. We don't know what country they're from. We know that it's advanced manufacturing and that it's in the automotive industry. They have plans to create 200 jobs by the year 2023 and 400 total jobs by 2025 when they're fully operational. The average wage for this company is $65,000 a year. It's important for you to know that when we evaluate these projects and we're having discussions about incentives with our local officials, the average wage is very, very important. The local leaders here, the elected officials, the city and the county management are incredibly dedicated to raising the county average wage in Cabarrus County. And so you know, I'm as a citizen, someone who lives here, I'm very glad to see them take that approach. So anytime we see wages, you know, with a number like this, we get excited. And then the investment that they intend to make is $85 million. They need 100 acres. They want to build their own 300,000 square foot facility with the ability to expand. They have a ceiling height requirement of 32 feet. And this project came from EDP&C. This is an actual project, you know, the parameters here, the details here are an actual project that we received. And this is the type of information that we get when a company is first looking. So what are the decision drivers for a company like this? What are they looking at? What's going to help them make their final location decision? Availability of skilled labor is incredibly important. Like I said before, if you can't find the skilled labor to fill the positions that you're creating, it doesn't matter how great the site is. It doesn't matter how close you are to the interstate. It's just not going to work. Highway accessibility is important. They got to get their goods in and out. Construction costs are important. How much is it going to cost for me to construct this massive facility? Of course, tax rate, proximity to major markets, airports, that sort of thing. Quality of life for employees. Again, are my folks going to want to live here? And then state and local incentives. You know, I think when you talk about economic development, a lot of times the incentive piece is what folks are most aware of. And probably, I would guess, I think you would probably assume that the incentives are a big part of the discussion. And they certainly are, but it's not until much later in the conversation, because if everything that's on the screen here, if all of this does not align, it doesn't matter how competitive our local incentive agreement is or how competitive our state incentive agreement is, they cannot do business here. And so it almost becomes, you know, we get to the point with these companies where they have 2 or 3 sites that are very much the same. The communities would check all of their boxes, and then it's up to the incentives to break the tie, so to speak. So let's talk a little bit more about incentives and the role that they play. I talked about, you know, where they come in in the process, you know, where do they come up? They strengthen the economic viability for a project in our community. They lower that cost of entry into our community. But it's important to know that these incentives are performance-based. And what that means is that if a company commits to investing a certain amount of money and creating a certain number of jobs, and they don't do that, they do not receive that incentive. They have to do what they say they're going to do before they receive the incentive. And it's also a grant back to them. So the way it's structured is you have your property tax bill, you pay your property tax bill, And if you've done everything that you say you're going to do, you get a portion of those property taxes granted back to you over a period of time. In Cabarrus County, it's 85% of that new tax revenue comes back to the company over a period of 3 to 5 years. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But support can also look like workforce training dollars. We partner with our local community college, and the state community college system will also often provide customized training dollars, so that if a company is, they're hiring 500 people over the course of 6 to 12 months, the community college can come in and help with training and that sort of thing. Sometimes it's just, making sure the permitting process has been streamlined. And then sometimes there are infrastructure needs. We've had companies that, they need a road where there isn't one. And so, that's a role that incentives can play in that discussion as well. So going back to Project Reboot, like I said, their goal is to invest $85 million and to create 400 total jobs over the course of 5 years. And so we would go, the company would come to us and say, we have shortlisted your community and another community in South Carolina. We want your best and final incentive offer. And so we would go into closed session with Concord City Council. In this case, let's say that the company is interested in Concord. We would tell them everything we know about the company. And we would say, we're recommending a property tax incentive for a period of 5 years, get their blessing on that. Then we would go and have a same conversation in closed session with the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners, get their blessing on that. And then that conversation plays out in the public setting. And so we would schedule a public hearing. That way the community is aware that this is something that they're voting on and that they're discussing. A lot of times we have to keep the project under code name until they've made a final decision. And then if the incentives are awarded, then of course we would go back and tell the company that, and then we just keep our fingers crossed that we've got an announcement coming soon. So with Project Reboot, they build their building, they hire their people, and then the tax auditor comes out and says, I want verification that you have hired all of these people, and I want verification that you have invested $85 million. And they look at the building and they say, yep, this is valued at X many dollars. They look at every single piece of machinery and equipment, every screw, every nut and bolt, everything that could be taxed, and say, yes, there is $85 million worth of taxable property in this building. Here's your tax bill. Your tax bill for the city and the county combined is just over $1 million. And then for a period of 5 years, that company will receive a check for 85% of their taxes back to them. And that's their incentive. So again, if you back it up and the tax auditor comes out and says, you only hired 200 people and the investment is 50 million, you really missed your mark. They're not going to receive the incentive that they were awarded. Now, sometimes, we've had this happen. We had this happen recently where an incentive was awarded and they became operational right when the pandemic was heating up. And so there were factors outside of their concern that affected their metrics. They still made the investment. They still hired people. They just didn't hire as many people. And so in a case like that, we can go back to the local elected officials and say, the investment is slightly lower and the jobs are slightly lower, but the intention was good and they still made the investment and they still hired the jobs. Can we just revise the terms of the incentive and still award it to them? And remember, it's based on whatever their property tax bill is. So it's not like they're going to get an incentive based on that $85 million if they only invested $75 million. So I think there's this perception that incentives are free money, that you're just writing a check to the company. The day they make that announcement, they're getting this giant check. And in our community, that's just not how it works. It is performance-based, and these companies have to do what they committed to do before they would be awarded the incentives. And then you think about what that project's impact is to our community. Of course, we talked about tax revenue, we talked about jobs, but there are also the indirect jobs of the construction workers that are building the facility, who maybe are coming in from out of town and are staying in hotels at exit 49 and are spending their money in our community. So there's definitely an impact there. We talked about how this particular project had strong wages and benefits, which only improves the quality of life for citizens here. Maybe it results in a stronger local supply chain. Maybe this company fills a need that some of our area manufacturers, now they're not having to truck things in from out of state. Maybe that they can find that here locally now. And then corporate philanthropy is something that we don't talk a lot about, but a lot of these companies, when they move in, they invest in the community in other ways. They give back to the schools, they give back to nonprofits and to charities in the community. And so, overall, they really just continue to impact where we live beyond just that tax revenue and the jobs that they've created. So I'll stop there. I know we've got still 30 minutes, and I hope that you guys have a lot of questions because we need to fill that time.
Well, Paige, I will start. So I held on. So the 85% 3 to 5 years is my understanding that is that a state statute that the local communities have to work within when they're doing these incentives. Is that correct?
That's right. It's a state so the structure of that incentive is required by state statute, but we have some flexibility at a local level to determine how long is that incentive going to be. Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? We could go up to 10 years. Is it 85%? Is it 90%? Is it 70%? So we've got some flexibility there. But in terms of it being based on the property tax, yes, that is a state statute.
Gotcha. And I mean, as you know, and as we've talked about, from a tourism standpoint, there are opportunities sometimes that will come along maybe for a new attraction. And the challenge is it might not be a huge capital investment. It might not be a huge job investment because maybe it's more part-time driven staff, but the amount of revenue that it generates is very significant. But unfortunately, the model is based more on capital and jobs. So hopefully as we go along and we have these projects, that you learn about or we learn about and we talk about, that there's some opportunities. I know we've done stuff in the past. I know, but it's just a little trickier to get through it because it doesn't fit the capital jobs format.
That's right. And that's something that, we talk about a lot is what other tools do we have to support especially those companies in the tourism industry, because we know what a significant impact that has on our community. How do we entice more of those attractions to come here? What other tools do we have to do that beyond just the property tax grant?
Gotcha.
And you're right, it is definitely a challenge.
Next question was on Allegiant. Obviously, they announced right prior to the pandemic, and obviously, as we all know, that's affected the tourism industry three times more than anybody else. Have they said, or is it a matter of just waiting until travel picks back up and their numbers pick up before are they still interested? It's just a matter of delaying?
That's right. They're still very interested, and they have their plans have not changed. It's just a matter of when. And actually, funny story about the Allegiant announcement. We were at the airport doing that public announcement with the team from Allegiant, and one of the guys that we had worked most closely with at the time couldn't make it because he was sick with some mysterious flu symptoms. And now we know what was going on with him. I don't think anybody had any clue what was about to happen in the world. But no, we've stayed in contact with them. We've stayed in contact with Dirk at the airport as well to make sure that we're aware of any other projects that are in the pipeline over there at the airport. But Allegiant specifically, they've given us no indication that they have any intention on changing their plans. It's just a matter of when will the industry support that planned expansion.
Gotcha.
Hey, Paige, this is Gail. I'm curious how our skilled labor or access to skilled labor in our area is.
We are, that's definitely a strength of ours. Again, we talk when we are working with these companies, we talk a lot about the Charlotte region, not just Concord, not just Kannapolis, not just Cabarrus County. Because what we've seen with our major employers is that if you are, Corning's a really good example. If you're a good employer and you pay well and you have good benefits, folks will drive from all over the region to work there. And so we will often show a labor map that's a 45 to 60 minute radius around whatever site it is that they're looking at, to show them all of the different occupations and the number of those occupations that exist in the region. And that definitely makes us competitive because we do have a very strong, that our skilled labor is very strong in the community. That being said, the manufacturing industry in general has a lot, and this is just nationwide, there are a lot of challenges with filling manufacturing jobs because there's still a lot of stigma associated with manufacturing jobs. And, you know, we go and tour these facilities and they are so clean and they're beautiful and there's a ton of technology. And, you know, this is not the manufacturing that we have in our mind of these like dirty, stinky plants that are, you know, nobody wants to work in. And so we work really closely with the local schools to kind of open the door for students to be engaged with manufacturing at an early age and see that introduced as a viable option. Because anybody that is aware of what this industry brings to the table will know that the wages are very strong. And a lot of times you can come out of high school or out of a 2-year training program at the community college with the skills needed to go work at one of these facilities and make a lot more than you would make graduating from college and going to work at an office somewhere. So we have a lot of work to do, I think, collectively as a community to continue to spread that particular message. But to answer your original question, no, we do sit in a very, very good spot as it relates to skilled labor here. Thank you.
Paige, I wondered if you wanted to touch on kind of going back, I think it was your last slide about, you know, the impact of a business, one of these larger corporate businesses being in the community, to tie that with the, you know, how that affects small businesses and, you know, demand for their products or services.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And for those of you that don't know Irene, she's the Economic Development Director for the City of Kannapolis. And so our office will work closely with her whenever we're recruiting projects who are interested in Kannapolis, and she kind of acts as our liaison to the City of Kannapolis. But yes, no, that is a really good question. And, you know, when these companies come in and they hire 500 people and they pay really good wages, those employees are then going to go spend their money at small businesses. They're going to eat at the restaurants. They're going to shop at the stores. But there are also several small businesses in the community. Maybe it's a small machine shop, or, you know, we've got a local company that makes cardboard packaging. So, you know, a large company that comes in and has a need, again, going back to that supply chain, has a need down the supply chain for something that one of our small businesses can provide here locally. And it just continues to strengthen that ecosystem here. And I think, you know, historically, economic development has, when folks talk about economic development, they're talking about these large, you know, hundreds to thousands of employees. But it definitely impacts small businesses probably more so than anything else. And what we're really starting to shift our focus on is how can we support those small businesses and help and encourage them to grow, because we know the impact that they're going to have overall in our community. So I'm excited to see how, you know, here with the EDC, as we continue to kind of refine our strategies, you know, maybe how that changes the landscape of economic development here locally over time. These are good questions. Anybody else? And you can also, if you want to just drop a question in the chat box, feel free to do that.
Yeah, Paige, thank you so much for all that info. By the way, quick introduction to myself. I'm Charlottean, but just moved back and help run a company called Tech Talent South. So we reskill folks to prepare them for software jobs, but I'm here on a personal capacity because I'm interested and I'm a huge fan of Cabarrus County. So yeah, my question, Paige, is, and you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but besides sort of the geographic footprint, when we look at our workforce and our skills, what are the other elements of the sales pitch that you make to employers about what Cabarrus County specifically has to offer? I think about especially a lot of the legacy businesses that, you know, historically have been part of the community here, and obviously in some cases still are. So just interested to hear your thoughts on that.
No, that's a really good question. A lot of times we're telling the story about the education system in our community. So what are the local universities doing? What kind of programs do they have that are churning out graduates that have the skill set that you're looking for? And the same with the community college. What are the programs that exist with the community college that is just going to continue to build that pipeline of available talent? And how can the community college partner with you once you've already been established to come in and do additional training? That's one thing I think most folks maybe don't think about with the community college, is that you can be a business that's been in operation for 50 years, and maybe you're bringing in a new piece of equipment and you've got to train your workforce on how to use that. The community college plays a really important role in that. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll also set up, you know, to your point about, you know, these legacy companies, we'll set up interviews for these companies, for companies who are considering the community. We'll set up interviews for them to talk with companies that are already in here in Cabarrus County, who've been doing business here, and just let them ask questions about how hard is it for you to fill your third shift positions? Do you, you know, is turnover high for you? What's your experience been like doing business in Cabarrus County? And we're fortunate that we have a good relationship with a lot of our existing companies, and they're willing to do that. And I mean, sometimes they'll say things and we're like, oh, we wish you would tell them it was really easy to fill those third shift spots. But that's just the reality of the situation sometimes. So we try to connect them to as many resources as we possibly can to get those questions answered. You know, I think what you're doing based on what you said is definitely filling a need. And I'll say, as it relates to that particular type of what we would call tech talent in Cabarrus County, when we are recruiting or when we're presented with the opportunity to recruit a company that needs that type of talent, we are not very competitive in that regard. And I think it's because there's such a saturation of that type of talent in Charlotte proper. It's just like in Uptown, you know, and they have not really run out of space yet. And so they're building this critical mass of that type of talent. But part of what we're doing with the Cabarrus Center is, you know, our philosophy is that if we can grow some of these companies organically and locally and continue to grow that type of talent here locally, then that becomes attractive to other companies who might be looking to relocate here, because we can point, you know, to the startup activity that has supported the need for that type of tech talent. So, you know, I think that's something that we hope proves to be true, and we'll see how things continue to progress over the next few months with that.
Cool. That's super helpful. I have one follow-up, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'll first caveat by saying that I am not at all in the camp that, despite what I'm doing now, like I think the value of kind of jobs that don't require a college degree and that are not tech enabled is incredibly important. I just happen to work in a particular space where we're prepping for tech enabled jobs. But along those lines, I'm wondering, has the economic development group thought any about sort of, as we prepare for, well, not prepare, as we experience sort of a different dynamic when it comes to working from home, and how one area that I would posit Cabarrus County is incredibly competitive is quality of life, and obviously internet accessibility, right? At least in the more urbanized or suburban areas of the county. So has there been any thought about programs or incentive packages or anything actually specifically targeted at the talent of that work at companies outside of Cabarrus County but can work from anywhere? So I think there's massive exoduses coming out of high expense locations where tech or just where high education jobs have been historically concentrated, and people looking for opportunities to have like a different lifestyle. So I'm just wondering if there's been any thoughts about programs for those types of people. Obviously, Charlotte's already a destination for those, and Charlotte's done an amazing job keeping their housing costs, their rental costs low, not their housing costs. But you know, so I'm just wondering, but I think Cabarrus, because of it's a crisis in Charlotte, housing is right now. So just a question if there's anything specific on the economic side that you guys have thought about for those types of people.
Yeah, no, definitely within the economic development industry, that is a conversation that collectively our peers are having is, you know, specifically when you think about recruiting corporate headquarters, I think that is going to change significantly moving forward. I mean, you're already seeing a lot of these companies, their real estate needs have changed so much as they've realized how their folks can work from home. And we've seen other communities who are, you know, enticing folks to move to their community, incentivizing them even to move to their community and work remotely. Cabarrus County, what I have seen is that the communities that are recruiting people to come live there and work remotely from there, they're struggling to support their services with the resident. Like they need residents basically. And Cabarrus County is not in that position. We've seen so much growth over the last 10 years and we'll continue to see growth. And if you look at, we have this map that we got from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. I think it was like 10 years ago, a majority of the people that moved to the Charlotte region were living and working in Charlotte. And now that's shifted. And a majority of the people that are moving to the Charlotte region are working in Charlotte and they're living in the communities around it. So we do, I mean, it's because of that quality of life that you referenced. We've got that part down. So for us, we have to figure out if the people are already living here, how can we give them solid jobs so that they're then investing in the community, they're spending that money in the community and they don't need to drive to Charlotte. You know, they're not living in Cabarrus County. We're not educating their kids here while they go and work in Charlotte, that they can actually have that job here. And so I think, you know, we're just going to have to kind of watch how things evolve over time. And going back to the incentive discussion, you know, we're so focused on jobs and investment specifically. But maybe a company is wanting to kind of like set up their home base in Cabarrus County. And maybe they're not going to have a significant property tax investment, but they're bringing some really high paying jobs with the option for people to work from Cabarrus County making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. You know, maybe the investment's not there, but the jobs are. Do we still want to incentivize that company? And I think those are conversations that we're just going to have to keep having as things continue to evolve.
Makes total sense. Thanks.
Yep. These are good questions. Anybody else?
I have a question, Paige.
Yeah.
What are some creative ways that you get leads? So before you have to do all the storytelling and sell them on it, what are some creative ways that you go out and get leads to then be able to tell the story about Cabarrus County?
Yeah, you know, I would like to say that we have some like really sexy business recruitment tactics that we employ, but we don't. We are very fortunate. Like if you reference that slide that I showed earlier that had our project activity over the last year, you know, we'll get over 100 RFIs in every year. And we, for the most part, do not have to do anything to get them because we are such an attractive community, because we check so many of the boxes. And, you know, these companies hire site consultant teams that do all this research on so many communities across the country. And they spit out this Excel spreadsheet and say, these are the 20 communities that we think would be the most viable for you. And now let's go through a deep dive and see if the sites work and if the workforce works and all that. And we are almost always on that initial list. The Charlotte region is almost always on that initial list, in North Carolina as well. So, you know, what we have to do is make sure that we have the real estate, that we have, you know, we talked about if they want to come here and we don't have a building to put them in, we've got nothing. We've got to make sure that our workforce is strong. And we've got to make sure that the resources that we have as a community are going to continue to support them once they've established their business here. And that's why I think, before I was in this role, I was I oversaw the business retention and expansion program. And so I feel personally like it's so important that we're supporting our existing companies just as much as we're spending our time recruiting new companies here. Because if we get them here and then we just never talk to them again, that's not going to help them continue to be successful. And so, we want to build a network of resource partners that's incredibly strong, so that once they get here, we say, okay, here are 10 people that you need to talk to, and they're going to help you with hiring, they're going to help you with marketing, they're going to help you with permitting. We want them to feel completely surrounded by that support. So my personal philosophy is that if we're, as an organization, are choosing between investing in business development versus investing in resources to support existing companies, I think that we're going to get a better return on our investment if we are building programs to support our existing companies than if we hired somebody who's out flying all over the world telling people about Cabarrus County, because that's what the state is doing and that's what the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance is doing, and we're benefiting from that. So I think we're doing okay. I know we've got just a couple more minutes. Anybody else have any questions?
If not, I'd love to hear how everyone heard about this event, because this is our first one here in Cabarrus County. And I'm just interested on what attracted you to this event and how did you hear about it? Anyone would care to share? Or just throw it into the chat, that could work too.
I am been potentially thinking about getting some office space from you guys, since I just moved back here and was on the email list. I saw your email yesterday. That's how I heard about it.
Fantastic, Charlie. Well, we'll have to connect.
For sure.
And I want to say, yeah, it was an email newsletter or something on social. I can't remember which. Might have been email, because then I was able to click through the links. So yeah.
Lisa Perry's on this call. Perry Productions does all our marketing and communications. So this ought to make you really happy, Lisa, that people are finding this information and and all the work that you're doing.
Giving John a virtual high five.
I heard it from you, Danielle.
Thanks for being my supporter, Ken. Appreciate it.
Are you open yet?
I'm across the street.
Really?
We are open. We finally got the furniture and everything in place yesterday, and we are open. We've got a couple more punch list items, but come on in.
Well, we got to get together.
Definitely. We're looking to have this type of event once a month. And it's really, again, to bring the community together in different ways. We know right now virtually is the way to get together and talk to people. Ideally, this will take place in person once it's safe and acceptable to do so. We will hold this in person at the Cabarrus Center, but until then, we'll be able to hold this virtually once a month. So if there is a topic that someone is interested in learning more about, or if there is a topic that you would like to share about Cabarrus County or any of the, the towns within or the surrounding area, we're definitely interested in putting that out there for the community. So as I mentioned, this is open to the public. So if it's something that you know of someone else that would be interested in speaking at an event like this, to be able to just have these one-on-one conversations that you can't really have too often. You might be able to, if you're involved in those business decisions or in a certain office, but I feel like, especially right now, you're not really crossing paths with too many people to be able to have these just organic conversations, be able to pose these questions. So if there's any topic that you're interested in or that you feel is necessary to discuss, I'd love to connect with you and see who we can get to speak for us each month. Hopefully we'll have some familiar faces keep coming back each month and joining us, but we will record them and we'll be able to put them on the Cabarrus Center website that Lisa will take care of for us. So that way we can be able to refer back to the questions and answers and also just keep the conversation going. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out today. And Paige, thank you so much. Very, very helpful to be able to learn all of this and be in this area and in the Cabarrus Center, hoping that we can bring everything to life like you were discussing.
Thanks for having me, Danielle. I hope to see you guys soon in our new space. They installed furniture overnight, and when I walked in this morning, I almost cried. It was beautiful.
We do have an open house next week. I believe it's on the 24th from 12 to 2. So if anyone's interested in signing up for an open house and dropping in, feel free. If you're in the area and want to just stop by and see the space, you can also do that between 8:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. I'll be here. All right, everyone. If we don't have any other questions, we can all sign off for the day.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.